with computer audio.
You're using the computer audio. Do you hear anything now?
No, because I'm not talking to anybody. So
Let me have that. Yeah, because the problem is, okay, that's open. Video should be going.
there's mute.
Parti-
What happened? Ah,
Participants, only you are here.
yep.
Reactions, more. Pause recording. It's recording apparently. Okay. I believe it is recording. Yeah, look, recording.
So I should pause recording, right?
Button, and then it'll say recording like we're doing now. And then
I see it say-
I've got an extra screen going.
I think the last time we met was when the Mets and Marlins did their joint protest.
Yes, that's right. And there was no game that night either. So
Yeah, we got a trend.
But you're absolutely right. We'll be 2 for 2 for no game.
Yeah.
We're bad luck for them playing ball games. Yeah. They want us to record in a couple. Oh, we are recording now. Okay, Sam hit the record button. Okay, hey Mel. Then he left.
No, he's back.
How are you? Oh, yeah, unmute you.
He's talking, but it's not coming through.
His lips are moving, but nobody's home, huh?
How about, am I unmuted now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, there we go. We actually have Steve's desk, but not
Yeah,
Steve.
you got the,
Let's see who we got.
I'm trying to get things working here. Not very successfully.
That's okay, I could never do it.
Well, the way I can tell, it says I should be,
I can see something on your desk. There's
Yeah,
a letter.
the camera's facing the wrong way. Here we go, let's try this. That didn't work either. Well,
Do anybody have anything interesting they're working on?
Just trying to work with the publisher so we can get Baseball in the Palms too out here soon. Been posting a lot. There's a good website if you like minor league baseball, and I was telling Steve about it on Facebook. I've been posting a lot on there. They do a lot of the lower minor leagues, Florida International League, Georgia Florida League, Georgia Florida Alabama League. There's a bunch of old Class D leagues from the 40s and 50s. Some interesting players that were back in those days.
Yeah,
What's
we've got a chapter member who's very big into documenting the history of the Georgia, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Alabama leagues. He used to hold reunions of the players every year and bring them back for, gosh, I think it was a long weekend, and I can't remember what month of the year, for reminiscing and presentations and so forth. And it was a really cool event. Apparently, I never made it, unfortunately. I think he usually had it up in Moultrie or Valdosta.
Yes, it was in Moultrie, I believe.
Too few alumni left. He stopped holding them a couple of years ago. So,
Matt, is his first name Clint?
yeah, Clint Chafin.
Oh, yeah, okay. I've been in touch with him.
Yep.
Yeah, real good guy.
Yeah, very nice guy.
Sam, there isn't a person affiliated with minor league baseball that you don't know.
I don't know about that.
There's no doubt. If anybody ever played minor league baseball in Florida, Sam knows the person.
I spoke to a fascinating guy today. I don't know if anybody remembers John Dorschner that wrote for the Miami Herald.
Hmm.
Well, he did a great article back in '83 where he followed the Miami Marlins around. These guys were Class A independent then under the Padres. And he told about how their lives were. They got $11 meal money. If they ever wanted to buy beer, they had to do without a meal to be able to buy a 6-pack of beer. You know, their whole life staying in hotels, and there was some little bit racy stuff in there, but it was a fascinating look into what minor league players had to deal with.
So I take it the guys didn't eat too often.
No, it was a lot of McDonald's, Wendy's, wherever, White Castle, which is amazing because, you know, these guys are athletes. You think the teams would have taken better care of the players, but they were on their own back then.
Yeah.
There's a rain delay in Atlanta, gentlemen, and all the flat fans are getting very wet. They're all getting wet. Hey, SABR came out with their blowout game book this week. You can get a free electronic copy. If you didn't get one, send me an email and I'll forward it to you. My easy email address is wearehavingfun@bellsouth.net, and I just sent Sam an electronic copy of it. Zach Kleiman and I wrote one story about the 2003 Marlins, their blowout game victory, and how that led to the World Series championship. It's a real great book. I mean, I only wrote one article in it with Zach. Every team has about 4 articles, and it's really great reads. I mean, so if you're like a Chicago Cub fan, they got anything you want, and it's listed by teams, and it's one of these kind of books you can pick up anywhere you want and start anywhere you want and finish anywhere you want. So if you want a copy of it and you haven't gotten the email yet from SABR, just shoot me an email and I'll send it to you. We are having fun at bellsouth.net.
I'm gonna check out here and then check back in and see if I can get this camera working.
All right,
Okay.
I'm going to send Eric a text and see where he is. Tell him we're waiting for him.
Matt, you came out okay on the storm? Everything's okay now?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we had over 8 inches of rain last week from Sally,
Oh, wow.
Oh my
in
God.
like 24 to 36 hours, which was just ridiculous. And it ended up washing out part of our driveway, which we've now gotten re-graveled, and noticed a couple days ago washed out a chunk of the road, which is not part of the actual road bed, but the shoulder that we're gonna have to get the county to come address. But yeah, the amount of rain we got from that was just unbelievable. Far more than what we got from Michael or Hermine or any of those.
Those storms are unusual for you guys, right? You don't normally get that.
Well, not too much, although we were on the wrong side of this one and it got closer to us than anyone expected. So,
if you like, I can jump in. I don't know if Eric is.
I just sent him a text. I guess you want to introduce Scott and let Scott start. I don't know what Eric.
Sure.
No. So why don't we introduce Scott and we'll
Sure.
play it from there. If Scott doesn't mind like hitting the pause button part of the way through.
No, not an issue at all.
Okay. All right. I'll be happy to introduce Scott.
I mean,
Well-
if you think that's appropriate, I don't know if you want to give Eric.
It's fine, First pitch was supposed to be.
I'm
Yeah.
standing here.
I
I'm
like
ready.
I've
Yeah,
been in the on deck circle.
go ahead. That's why you show up to games early. Put me in, coach.
Number 3-4 hitter. We just don't like being in that on deck circle for too long.
Well, I'm really excited to have Scott. He's an accomplished author, artist, athlete, and a writer. He wrote the book Baseball, Art, and Dreams. I got to know Scott doing my own research because he was a member of the 1977, 78, and 79 Miami Orioles. Played for the 1978 FSL championship team. And he wrote an inspiring book I think it's going to be really fascinating today. He's going to share some of that with us today. I know I got the chance to speak with Scott on the phone today. We had a great conversation, and his story is it really is an inspiration to all of us. I think we're going to get a lot out of this today. So I'm going to turn the time over to Scott.
Thank you very much, Sam. And I want to welcome the members of SABR to join all of us tonight. And I have penned it's an American baseball memoir. It's titled Baseball, Art, and Dreams. And so what it is, it's kind of, as Sam said, it's extremely inspirational. And that was kind of what motivated me to devote years in writing it and making it a story that hopefully will inspire. It actually starts when I was a very young boy, and I was 5 years old, and my father was a noted photographic artist. So he, in his exhibiting and salon work and a lot of international work and just different things he did in photography, I was one of his subjects in many of his exhibition photographs. So in one of his famous photographs happened to be a photograph of me, and it was called Strike Three. And that was created in August of 1959. And what I've put together a little thing. So this is actually the
Eric
photo.
is just joining us, but go ahead.
Okay, well, let's just shoot, but we'll just shoot back to Eric.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
fine.
I just went online to find your book to buy. I see your Facebook page. Can you
Right.
buy it through your Facebook page, Scott, or is there a better page? Do we buy it through?
Well, you can go to baseballartanddreams.com.
Okay.
And I will explain that when we come back in.
Okay.
I guess, assume that's Eric there.
That's Eric.
It's Eric.
All right, I'll
Eric.
step back out. We've got a rain delay, and Eric.
All right.
you're
We're
up
gonna
no, what
next.
happened?
play-
Did I-
we're
did
gonna
I
rain
interrupt
play
somebody?
all day. Eric, it's so good to see you, my friend.
You too, Lou. How you doing?
Good. You're out in Oregon?
I'm in Washington, in Tacoma.
Washington.
I'm almost
How
as
you
far as
doing
you can
with-
get from Miami in the
How
continental.
are you doing with the fires? You guys handling?
You know, we're okay. We had some really bad air. We couldn't go outside for, I don't know, about 10 days. But we're okay now. We had some good rains to clear things out, and everything's back to, whatever counts as normal.
Oh, this is the book. There you go, Stealing Home. And I understand that this week is your 6-month anniversary.
Yes.
It's been out 6 months,
It's been out
and
6
it's getting unbelievable reviews nationwide. Not just with baseball nerds like us, but but with the outside public who are interested. And then Stealing Home is a story about a baseball. It's about family, about the American dream, and it's about the fight to turn Los Angeles into a big league city. And the land around Dodger Stadium were once the home of a very vibrant Mexican-American community. And in the early 1950s, these communities were condemned not because something was wrong. They were condemned because of the greed of the city fathers in Los Angeles. And they were promised new housing, and that never happened. And as a result of everything that happened, the Dodgers get lured to LA. The folks that lived there were thrown off their land. And this is a story. It's a sad story, because it's a story that hasn't been written, and it's now been told that the dream of the Dodgers moving to Los Angeles, that may have been good for the family that brought them there, but for the families that had been in that area for over 100 years, this is their story. This is the story about how they were wronged and how our city out there did them wrong. So with that, Eric is also a former Sports Illustrated writer. He writes all over. And an interesting fun fact that I didn't know prior to meeting him, it turns out that Eric's mother and I, we never dated them. Eric's mother and I graduated North Miami Beach High School the same year, 1973, and didn't know each other, because there were over 1,000 people in our graduating class. So Eric, the floor is yours.
Sure. Hold on one second. I'm having technical difficulties. Can you all hear?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, my headphones were so tangled that I couldn't move. I was choking myself. So yes, thank you, Lou. Thank you for having me. I am not from Miami, but my mom is from Miami and spent all kinds of time growing up in North Miami Beach. So it's exciting to talk to your chapter. I'm also a SABR member here in Tacoma. And this book, though, is not about obviously Miami or Tacoma. It's about LA, which is where I grew up. And it's sort of a simple story and a really complicated one at the same time. It's a book about how we got Dodger Stadium and why it exists. I love Dodger Stadium, grew up a huge Dodger fan. But when I was in high school, a fellow named Frank Wilkinson came and spoke to my U.S. history class, and he was there to talk about the Red Scare and being blacklisted. Frank was in his 90s at the time, and he gave us this kind of intense speech and talk, and he said, you know, who here's a Dodger fan? And I raised my hand, and he kind of looked at us sternly and said in a gravelly voice, well, Dodger Stadium should not exist. And I found that to be a sort of jarring and compelling statement. And he proceeded to tell his story that he had been a public housing official in Los Angeles in the 40s and 50s. And he had been in charge of a really ambitious project post-World War II called Elysian Park Heights that was going to be built in Los Angeles in the place where Dodger Stadium is now. But before the project could be completed, Frank was testifying in an eminent domain hearing, and he was outed as a communist at the hearing. He was a Communist Party member, and it ruined his life. Lost his job. His wife was a school teacher. She lost her job. The project got canceled. It's front page news in LA for a long time. It was an era, obviously, of fierce anti-communist sentiment in America, and a lot of that was used to political purpose, mostly by real estate interests in LA. And so the book follows Frank's story, and it follows the story of this family, the Arechiga family, who lived in these communities where Dodger Stadium now exists. And as their kind of paths inevitably collide in LA in the 40s and 50s, as this family fights and resists tooth and nail. And then obviously the book talks about baseball and how LA ended up with the Dodgers in particular. I'm sure you're all familiar with the story of the Dodgers leaving Brooklyn for LA. It's a story that's been told over and over and over again. And for me, as an Angelino and as a writer and journalist, I was really interested in the story from the other perspective. I thought, why do we never hear about kind of the LA side of it? Why do we never hear about what happened in LA? You know, a lot of tears have been shed about the Brooklyn Dodgers leaving, but it wasn't just a triumphant arrival in LA. It was a really brutal and politically fraught arrival, and it almost ended in disaster for the O'Malley family. You know, the city of LA, because of all these events, found itself holding a vote on the Dodger Stadium deal only a couple months after the team started playing there in May of '58. And the Dodgers won 52% to 48%. You know, had it gone the other way, we could be talking about a whole different history. The team could have left LA. They were threatening to. Dodger Stadium would not have been built. It's a fun alternative to think about. Maybe not that fun, depending on who you are. But that's the gist of the book. You know, the book is not like an academic book. It's a journalistic book, I would say. It kind of reads, hopefully, you know, like a story, and gets into the hearts of these characters a little bit. And I'm happy to kind of keep talking about it, but I could also answer questions, or Lou, if you have any questions, however you want to do this.
Did you bring the video with you of them being removed from their home?
I could pull it up and share my screen. It's
Yeah,
a newsreel footage.
I think that this video, when you watch this video, you'll never think of Dodger Stadium the same way. Eric spoke to my law class this summer, and Eric says it's not. This is a textbook. It was required reading for my law students this summer. This is an absolute textbook. It's written because he's a journalist. He tells stories, So it's not written like the book I wrote, where it's more of a textbook. But you don't have to be a textbook writer to write the truth. And he really peels back a cover that nobody has ever written about or talked about. I hope your chapter nominates you for a SABR Research Award on this, Eric.
Oh, thank you.
And if they don't, call us, and I'll be happy to sign the form to nominate you for a.
I might have you do it since we can't actually meet in person now anyway. And I
No,
only moved up here in
We'll
in
talk
October.
about it, because it's what's so wonderful. And I bought my book, so it's not like I got it for free. What's so wonderful about this book is just it's one of these you can't put it down kind of things.
Here, let me, I can share the whole little presentation I gave to your law class, Lou, and just sort of.
Try the video, because I know
The videos at the
you're a
end.
little bit short of time, and this
It's all right. I
kind
can
of
scroll through it quickly.
the whole thing.
Let me see if I can do a screen share here. How do I share my screen?
One participant can share at a time.
Oh,
so
it's
you can do it.
disabled right now.
Okay, hold on. Let me do this.
Sure.
See if you can do it now, Eric.
No.
All right. No, let's see
Wait,
this.
wait. Here it is.
You got it?
I think so.
Yeah, here it is.
Is that it? All right, my son just walked in here. Want to say hello, Clay?
Hi.
All right, so there's the cover of the book, and there's Frank Wilkinson. Can you see the whole presentation? Is it somewhat?
Yeah,
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna.
Can everybody see?
I can see.
I'm just gonna kind of go through the
Anybody not
slides.
see it? Okay, great.
So there were 3 neighborhoods where Dodger Stadium is now, called Palo Verde, La Loma, and Bishop. And you see a little map of what it looked like. These were, not the best neighborhoods, but a lot of them were pretty nice too. And they were demolished in this sort of charge for urban renewal, as it was called at the time. And there's Abrana Arechiga. She's sort of the matriarch of this family I write about, and she became the face of resistance to the housing project and to the Dodger Stadium deal. Immigrant from Mexico, illiterate, but very smart, and just extremely, extremely fierce person. Here's a rendering of what the project would have looked like. A famous architect named Richard Neutra designed it. And so you see community resistance at City Hall. That's one of the illustrations from the book. The book is illustrated by an artist named Adam Billison. So there's LA City Hall. Here's Frank Wilkinson testifying at the moment he's blacklisted. He's the guy on the right here. Obviously, we have the Dodgers arriving in LA. That's Rosalind Wyman. She was a really crucial city council member and bringing them in. Here's some pro-Dodger propaganda from the election. You'll see that the Dodgers in this brochure actually promised that there will be no traffic coming and leaving Dodger games, which if you've ever been to a Dodger game, it's pretty funny. And here's the video. Let's see if I can get it playing for y'all. Let's see. So excuse the sound if there's anything. Well, it's silent. Can you see this? I know it's not the best quality, but it's what we can do. I sort of illicitly recorded this from the UCLA library where they have all their old newsreel footage. But you see sheriff's deputies coming to evict the Arechiga family from their home. It was carried on TV in LA. It was a huge story at the time. And obviously there's tons of cameras there and everybody was waiting for it to happen. And there's Abrana and her husband Manuel, her daughter Tolina. This is the house that they had lived in since 1922. Built it themselves. The eviction was the sort of culmination of a long legal battle and a long kind of battle that was waging in the media between the family and their supporters and between the city and county of LA and the Dodgers to a lesser extent. The Dodgers were wisely in the background of all this. They weren't too vocal and opposing these kinds of evictions or supporting them. Although after this eviction, there were still some families living in the communities, and Walter O'Malley got the picture and he paid them out pretty heftily to leave quietly because he realized that this kind of bad PR was not going to serve his team very well. That's Lola Vargas. She was a war widow, daughter of Abraham and Manuel, carried by her hands and knees out the door, you know, put into jail. She had a nervous breakdown. It was pretty ugly. Now we're going to see the homes get bulldozed, which happened as they stood there watching. And there's the video. So that's and then you have this. Dodger Stadium, one thing the book talks about a bit is the construction of the ballpark architecturally. And I'll say that I went into the book not having strong feelings really one way or the other about Walter O'Malley. I feel like he'd always been, you know, villainized so much as a kid. You get the whole story about, you know, if you walk into a restaurant and you see Hitler, Stalin, and Walter O'Malley, but you only have 2 bullets. Who do you shoot? You shoot O'Malley twice, all those jokes. And so I had, you know, that vision of him as a kid, even though I was from LA and my family's from LA, or my dad grew up there, and not a lot of New York connection for me. But I, you know, you hear that stuff. So I didn't go into this necessarily expecting to become a fan of Walter O'Malley. And I will say I gained a great admiration for him as a businessman and as a sort of baseball visionary. He was extremely he had a lot of foresight with what baseball could become and what the baseball fan experience would look like. Dodger Stadium was really his vision, and even the engineering of the stadium, the design of the stadium, you know, he had as much to do with it as anybody. It was kind of the singular dream he had to create a monument to himself and to sort of reimagine the way baseball would be experienced by fans, you know, open concourses, you know, obviously he hit on some things, the layout of the stadium, the seats all pointed towards home plate, the single use privately owned ballpark, as opposed to what the trend was at the time, which were these, you know, multi-sport stadiums, and those are all gone now. But he obviously missed on some other things, like, you know, building it away from downtown life, you know, making it so you can only get to the stadium by car. And that was a big selling point for him. He thought cars would be the future, and he was right in a way, but the future ended up kind of passing him by. So the last section of the book deals a lot with O'Malley and his sort of quest and his passion for this stadium, and then the actual construction, where it was actually dug out of a hill as opposed to built up. So the stadium it's sort of sunk into a hill, and the grandstands are cantilevered as they kind of overhang. It's a pretty fascinating architectural idea, and it was a huge success for him. All right, I'm going to unshare my screen now since I don't have much more to add there, if I can figure out how to do it. There we go.
You go.
I'm back.
Yeah, you're back and looking color. Are you working on any other projects, Eric?
You know, I'm not really. Hoping to write another book, but I don't have anything in the chamber right now. I'm just working. No big projects on the horizon, at least not the immediate horizon. Hopefully something will present itself soon. The sort of promotion cycle for this one, I think, is coming to an end, maybe mercifully a little bit. It's been an unusual experience. It's my first book, so I can't compare it to anything, but doing this all on Zoom and, you know, social media, as opposed to getting out in person and talking to people, which is what I would have preferred. I haven't seen the book on the shelf of a bookstore yet in person. Hopefully, I've gone to a couple times to Barnes and Nobles near me, but they don't have the book. So hopefully I'll get that experience one day, or get to go on an airplane again and see it in an airport bookstore or something.
Eric?
Yes.
Will it be available as an ebook?
It is available as an ebook and an audiobook now. So you can buy it on Kindle or on, Kobo or whatever ebook platform you prefer. It's available in most libraries as well. There's a paperback coming, which is exciting, in March, I think early March. And right now, yeah, hardback, audiobook, and ebook are available.
Eric, is there a reason why when they built the stadium, did they just focus in on one area, or were there other areas that they were looking at?
It was really this area. The site was really appealing to O'Malley, and it was kind of what the city used to lure him there. They gave him the land for a song, first of all. They gave him a really good deal. And second of all, it sits at the intersection of a bunch of freeways. It's very close to downtown LA, and it's very easily accessed by car. So you had this situation where back in Brooklyn, O'Malley had been fighting with the city, with Robert Moses, who was this powerful figure, about building a new stadium there. And what he really, really wanted was parking lots. Ebbets Field, he felt, didn't have enough parking. And Dodger Stadium, or this land that became Dodger Stadium, offered the chance to have like an ocean of parking. And for him, that was just so appealing. So he really, he kind of saw this site and he was seduced by it. The famous story goes that he was taken up in a helicopter, an LA County Sheriff's helicopter, and flew over the city, and he saw the empty land and the intersecting freeways, and that was the moment where he knew that this is where he'd build his stadium.
Hey, Eric, could you talk a little bit more about Frank Wilkinson? I'm kind of intrigued by him and his role in all of this.
Oh yeah, Frank is fascinating. Honestly, I'd say he would deserve his own biography. He actually there's a biography of him out, although I'm not a big fan of it. And I don't like to disparage other books, but it's pretty lousy. He was born in Michigan, raised a little bit in Arizona, and then ultimately Beverly Hills is where he grew up. His parents were serious heavy Methodists and conservative political activists. His father was an anti-vice activist in LA, sort of notably, surgeon, and not a surgeon, but a doctor, excuse me. And so Frank grew up in this heavily religious, conservative, Herbert Hoover loving household. And he went to UCLA, was a popular kid. He had a hearing problem, which sort of made him a little bit different. And after college, he went on a backpacking trip through Europe, and this is mid-30s Europe. And he came back radicalized. He lost his faith in God and became a communist, basically, on that trip. And he saw poverty, he liked to say, for the first time in his life, and it blew him away. So he comes back to LA and kind of is lost and doesn't know what to do with himself. He's recruited by a Jesuit priest to work in public housing and advocating for public housing in LA. And that sort of sets him onto this path to joining the Communist Party, to really rising quickly in the housing authority. He was very much a true believer. Frank, he not only managed housing projects, he lived in them with his family. He lived in a few different projects in LA. I talk about in the book Willie Davis, the Dodger center fielder. He lived in a housing project in Boyle Heights in LA at the same time as Willie Davis, a young Willie Davis. So like he took it seriously. And when his life was, sort of ruined in '52 by this blacklisting, he had to go to work as a night shift security guard at a department store. Finally, he sort of gathers himself and finds his strength, and he became an anti-HUAC activist. So the second kind of part of his career was this long, aggressive anti-HUAC campaign he led, with the ACLU and other kind of similar groups He eventually went to prison for a year protesting HUAC. He lost a Supreme Court case 5-4, and he got out and he kept on fighting. It was very much his life's work. And in the 80s, the kind of third big Frank act is that he ends up suing the FBI for information about their surveillance of him after the Freedom of Information Act comes out. And he gets into this protracted legal battle with the FBI, and he finds out that he's been followed by the FBI for 40 years, starting in 42, when he went to his first public housing protest, and they had like 500,000 pages of surveillance on him. And it became sort of an iconic open government case for people who are interested in that sort of thing, you know. So he became a sort of freedom of information martyr a little bit. So yeah, he had a lot of lives as an activist, and he was a self-aggrandizing egomaniac, but he also was a true believer who really put the work in. His kids and his widow, Donna, who is still alive, were really gracious with their time. He also left a very, very long oral history at UCLA. So I was able to access that and, you know, hear his story in his own words, and that was really helpful.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anybody else? I know you've got another gig to do, and we really appreciate you popping in real quick for us. I guess
it's my pleasure.
The advantage of Zoom, though, I'm sure you've been able to speak at places that you weren't going to be able to speak at had the book been published, though. You know, when you were going to go town to town.
It's true. It's actually been really cool. I mean, this is the first time I've ever done 2 events in the same evening, for the record. But I mean, I've gotten to connect with a lot of people that I wouldn't have otherwise, and I think it's been a blessing in disguise in a lot of ways. You know, I have 2 little kids, and I get to share the experience with them and my wife, and you know, it's not the worst thing to be home for an extended period of time.
All right, we're gonna let you go then, Eric. I know you gotta get ready for your next presentation, but thank you very much. And again, it's a great read, and looking forward to your next project.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And if you need to find me, you know, Lou knows where to find me. I'm around. Hopefully I'll come see you all in person one day. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Thank
Eric.
you. You too. Eric. Appreciate it.
Howdy, team.
Hey.
That sure was a wonderful interview. Very interesting. Now, okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Everybody, okay. So I'm back in the on deck circle.
All right, you're up to bat, Scott.
Okay, so one, I want to thank Sam, you and Lou for having me tonight, and also your guests for taking their time to hear my story and what it is. I've written a very interesting American baseball memoir that covers 18 years of my life in baseball. And I wrote it, my reason for writing it was, there's several, but the biggest driving force was that it's a very inspirational story. So I will capsulize that, but there was a story written about me in April of 2014 by Tom Lavarro. He's a noted baseball writer and is a writer with the Washington Times. And the title of his article was "Injured Hand Did Not Keep Scott Christopher from a Life in Baseball and Art." So all through my life, I've been having articles and different pieces, either written or filmed about me, given what I had to overcome from a major handicap that I had happened to me when I was 6 years old. So to bring my memoir to life, Tom wrote that article, and the response was overwhelming. So from that, I was like, gosh, you know, maybe there is a book here. And then Tom was kind of saying, you should write a book, and different people were saying that. And then my wife, she said, we were walking, we had an art studio in Chelsea in New York City, and we were walking up to the Art Students League to take a figurative class. And she goes, she just said it. She said, "You're the only one who can write your story." And you see this kind of response and interest, and that had an effect on me. And the next night in Union Square at the Barnes & Noble, I started to write my spill draft. And I spent 180 straight nights up in their cafe, just putting it all out there. So that was I started that in October of 2014. So there's been different cycles and evolutions of my memoir, but here we are. And to kind of, so your guests can understand, when I was very young, I had just a very deep passion for the game of baseball. And that started, my father, who was a very noted photographic artist, he started using me as a subject in his compositions when I was 3 years old. But some of them happened to be on a baseball field. And then when he would have me doing certain things, I just absolutely loved running the bases and just the whole concept of the game of baseball, even though I was very young. So at age 5, on August the 3rd, 1959, he created a somewhat famous photograph of me, and it's called Strike 3. So over probably 40 years, this either won or placed in international photographic salons probably at least 50 times. And then this was kind of fun. This I did in Central Park exactly 55 years to the hour later. That was me in Central Park, kind of duplicating that swing. And then I did it again when I turned 60 years old, or when it was the 60-year anniversary. So I've had fun with this shot, but my exposure to baseball in the beginning was not really as a player. It was as a photographic subject. And so from that, this is another, now this, I was 5 years old in this photograph. And this was another shot that my father created. This was called It's a Hit. And so for 5 years old, I was not only passionate about the game, but I was probably a little bit more skilled than most 5-year-olds. And then in April of 1960, I was at a Little League game, and my father called me, and I was running to him. I was coming from the soda stand with my best friend, Mike Malone. And Mike Malone, he just went on to Silicon Valley when he was 9. He's a big part of the computer pioneer team. He's known as the historian of Silicon Valley. He's been up for 2 Pulitzers, just a million things in the world of writing and technology. So it was Mike and I happened to, my shoe got caught in a hole in the ground, the end of my tennis shoe. And as I was falling, I fell. And as I was falling, I fell into a pile of glass. And right before my hand hit the ground, I could see the base of the soda bottle, but it was too late. So it cut me from here to here, cut all 7 tendons. And, so it's a very handicapped hand. For a year, I couldn't even pick up a baseball. And so even here, the headline here, Plucky Rookie vows comeback at age 6. So I was very intent to just continue to play baseball. I didn't know, the doctors at one time thought that when the accident happened, they considered amputating my hand. So of course that didn't happen, but it literally took years to rehabilitate it and at least get it to a place where it could even hold a baseball. So this was me after I cut my hand. This would have been in August of 1960. So there wasn't anything that I could imagine as far as a baseball player that I couldn't do. I was not going to not bring my hand back no matter what it took so I could play baseball. It just was not an option. So it was a dream even when I had the handicap, and it became more a dream as I evolved. So I was dealing with a hand. I'll show you here. My hand, if you can see this is a dime. And so this is like, it's unable to pick up, it's all tied together. So it's unable to pick up, just things. It has to slide them off to the corner. And this would be as much strength to snap your fingers. This is as much strength that's in my right hand. That's it. And so you can see that when it did grow, as I got older, you can see the difference there. And where it hurt in hitting was when you're hitting like this, ideally you line your middle knuckles like that. That gives you a better follow through on your swing. But because my thumb could not wrap around the bat because there's no pocket in it. So this is how it had to, I was basically hitting with 9 fingers. And so that is something that I had to deal with. And when I would throw, I can't literally, if I pick up a baseball, it's like this. I can't pull it in there. So over many years, they used to call my hand the claw or call me the claw. I would drive it into it in my mitt. So once I drove it into it, this didn't hold the baseball. It got hung up on my thumb like that. It just happened to fit right in there. So it was a very big obstacle to overcome. And also, I was very small. So this is me here as a 12-year-old, and you can see by the scale, how much of a difference there was. But I could run, and in baseball, if you're fleet of foot, you just make contact and you put the pressure on the other team. So a nice thing is I was moving forward. People were noticing that I did have, in fact, an elevated bit of athleticism. So I've written about this before, the 8 different geniuses, but one of them is you can be an athletic genius. So that the muscle memory and how my muscles fired and all that was becoming evident. And when I was 12 years old, I was in Sports Illustrated. So even with my handicap, this was primarily about track. And then it said, after completing his Little League season with a .458 batting average. So my hand was beginning to respond to my rehabilitation and all the hard work I was doing. My book then, my book actually, and it's very in-depth and it's very analytical. It's not just the story about me. It's very academic. It breaks down hitting, fielding, fans, stadiums. So it's not just about Scott Christopher, which people have found very interesting. So it was very common, sports career inspired by crippling injury. And this has been written about pretty much since I was 6 years old. Now, when I was a junior in high school, I had multiple dreams as a baseball player, but one was to play for the University of Maryland. My parents had grown up in Baltimore. My great-great-uncle is in the Hall of Fame, Wilbert Robinson. He was a player on the Baltimore Orioles in the late 1800s. They won, I think it was 3 championships in a row. Then he was the manager. Then they sold the Orioles, who of course became the Yankees, but he went on to manage the Brooklyn Dodgers for, I think it was 16 seasons. And he took them to 2 World Series, and he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in the 1940s. He was actually on the cover of Time magazine in 1931. So I grew up immersed in art and baseball and just had such a passion and a purpose for it. So this is a picture you can see there. That is me as a junior in high school. Now I was I was a wrestler. So in this photograph, I weighed 100 pounds. Now that was I was 16 years old then. So I weighed 100 pounds. I had the worst season of any junior in high school in the country. I was up 4 times and I struck out 3. So when I was in the dugout, I made a pact with myself. You know, it's called riding the pine. And I was in there like a caged raccoon. And so I said, whatever I have to do, I will not sit on a bench as long as I play baseball from the end of this season forward. And so I happened to have a coach. I had great coaches, but I did have one who was a retired Marine and a boxer. And he came up, he said, well, why don't you build a batting cage? And I said, well, that's a great idea. So I had a tree fort in the back corner of my yard that I actually lived in. And I dismantled that, used the wood, and I built a batting cage. And I lived in it. I actually lived in it for years. But between that 0 batting average junior year to my senior year, I was able to become a starter, hit 371, and I was voted the most valuable player. So all of this is, you know, part of my inspiration, that you can do it, that in order to achieve it, you have to perceive it. So from that point on, I went over to the University of Maryland. Of course, you know, I was very small still, but I had that vision, and the coach was kind. He gave me time in his office, but you're out of state, and I am absolutely booked up with infielders. In fact, his second baseman was from the high school where I played. He actually got a scholarship there the year before. His name was Billy Anderson. So I said, okay. So then I go to a prep school, Mercersburg Academy, and I did very well there. Just a magnificent school, academically driven, beautiful athletic history, great facilities. And I hit 380 there. So I go back to Maryland, pretty much a rewind of the tape. Okay, now what am I going to do? And I found a school in Southern Virginia, which was kind enough to give me an opportunity, Ferrum Junior College. And from there, I went to Ferrum. I hit 380. Now, the Washington Post had been following me since I was 12 years old. So they saw the inspiration behind my story. And so they gave me a shot. I hit 380. I went back to Maryland, pretty much rewind, see after your second year where you are. And this is where you see the most beautiful piece, I think, of my story is by truly believing. There's moments where it just happened. And so that's what happens when you dream and when you believe and when you don't take no for an answer and you are inspired to be the best you can be at whatever you do. And so our team that summer, it was kind of would have probably made a movie out of it. There were only 11 or 12 of us on it, and we were the least financed team in the league. And then we end up in the finals against the most financed team in the league. And I'm the leadoff hitter, which I usually was until I was in pro ball, where I was a 3-4 hitter most of the time. And so this is a big game for the championship to go to the regional AAA-BA tournament, which is an All-American tournament. And I was the first guy up, and I didn't know that the Maryland coach was in the stands. I had no idea, and the reason he was because his number 1 or 2 recruit was pitching against us, and he was known as the flamethrower. And I mean, I got in the box. I had never seen somebody throw that hard. I mean, I was like, I had to step out, recalculate, like this was a BB of maximum proportions, and he was a left-hander. So with 2 strikes, I said, I'm just going to have to try and bunt. And I tried, fouled it, so that was a strikeout. So when I went to shortstop, I was contemplating what I needed to do in the box, because there's 6 different places you can stand in a batter's box and different ways to accommodate certain pitchers and velocities and that type of thing. So his screwball was fierce, but it actually hit, it would come in and then it would dive toward the first base side. And so I said, if I screw myself into the plate and I don't come out, I don't commit and throw all my power out before I go into that pitch, then that's, you know, that's how I'm going to counter this velocity and this speed that I was experiencing. And the pitcher's name, his name is Kurt Crystal. He's known as the flamethrower, and he had just a fierce reputation. He had a scholarship to Arizona State. He would have been a high draft pick had he not declared he was going to go to college. So when I get up the second time, I had made my adjustments, and sure enough, in that at bat, he threw that screwball, and with my hand, because there's no pocket, there's certain pitches where my hand would only function at maybe 50%. And so if it was on the outer half of the plate, that was in my power zone, because I hadn't had to bring my wrists over yet. It was still in that V, not a pocket, but it was still right there in my palm. And so I screwed myself into home plate, and he threw the screwball, and I hit it about 380 feet for a home run. So then we play, I scored another run. We lose 3-2. I don't know the Maryland coaches there. He goes to the flamethrower. What's the deal with Christopher? I couldn't get him out. I mean, that pitch he hit out was the best pitch I threw all night. He finished that sentence, and the Maryland coach, Coach Eldon Jackson, who he had close to 30 years as a head coach, and just he's kind of a legend in the world of college coaching. He finished that sentence, and he walked over to me and asked me about it, and I told him what I had to do as far as adjusting and screwing my shoulder into the plate. And he goes, how would you like a full scholarship to the University of Maryland? And that was that one. So my book just shows these moments. And then I went to Maryland. I was 2-time MVP, all ACC as a shortstop, tied the nation for stolen base percentage. I wasn't thrown out as a junior. I was in the top 5 as a senior. And so that's that. And I thought for sure, and I had been told that, you know, just sit by the phone for the major league draft. And I did, and never rang. So I said, well, that's okay. I've dealt with setbacks before. I will be in spring training in 1977 because I could run, and I knew I was most likely in the top 1% speed-wise, that if I get 1 at bat, I'll get 2 at bats. And so I was gearing up for that, and I was assistant coach at Maryland in the fall. A team right towards the end shows up. They didn't have a shortstop. I didn't know that the Orioles scout was in the stands. I didn't know he was there. And I made a very big league play at short, very deep in the hole. Of course, I knew who I was playing against because I was playing against either my former teammates or players that I was coaching. And so this fella that hit it was not really that fleet of foot. I knew I had time, made the backhand stab, threw a nice throw across, and I got him. And so after the game, I see the scout talking to my coach, and then he calls me over, says, we made a mistake on you. We should have drafted you. I said, well, you know, I'm thinking in my mind, well, that's a whole season, and it's just, that's just what it is. It's unfortunate. And then we left. And then in January, I thought I might be drafted in the winter draft. That didn't happen. And right after that, the phone rang. And it was Dick Bowie, who's a very noted Orioles scout. And he said, the Orioles would like to sign you. I'll be up in your area in about 2 weeks. I said, where do you live? He told me Fredericksburg, Virginia. I said, I'll be there tomorrow morning. So I drove to Fredericksburg, signed, and then that started my life in pro ball. And when I showed up in spring training, I was the darkest of the darkest dark horses there. You know, I hadn't been signed. My hand was marginal, just a lot of different things. So as I proved when on opening night, here, I'll show you this. This actually, we made it into the ACC championship. So that's me as a shortstop, my senior year in 1976. So this was, that was a tough loss in the championship. We had them 2-1 in the ninth and lost it 3-2. So from that, you know, then the Washington Post was just doing different articles. And this was after I made that play and Dick Bowie called, they did a big article on me. Baseball player finds a hard road leads to his life's goal. So the inspiration part has been there all along. In that summer, I played in Korea, which was great. You get 25, 30,000 people at a game. It was our bicentennial American team. So we toured Korea, and that was that. So when I made it through the process in spring training, wasn't expected to, but I did make the Miami Orioles team. And this has always been very special. This was opening night in Miami Stadium. So this was in April of 1977. And the guest of the Orioles that night to throw out the first pitch was Joe the Brown Bomber Lewis. And so I had boxed and I followed boxing, was a big boxing fan. So it meant a lot to me that he was right there, right on the rail, right next to the on-deck circle. And so we're playing that game. We get in the 8th inning, we're down by 2 runs, and I hit a triple, and we won it. The bases were loaded. And I looked at Joe Lewis, and he took his fist, and it was just so beautiful. He went like that, and I was like, wow, that was Joe Lewis. So that's how I started my career in Miami on opening night of 1977. So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of different stories. I think my 2.5 years in Miami were fabulous. Loved the city. Of course, I did play in AA in 79 and 80. There was an unfortunate development in 1979 where I was doing very well in AA. I was hitting .340 right-handed, and the Orioles had converted me to a switch hitter in instructional league in 1978, and that was coming along, and the director of player development in the instructional league, his name's Clyde Klutz. He was a catcher for the Yankees and a lot of Yankee history as scouting director in these different things. And Clyde came to me at almost the end of instructional league, said, Scott, you keep improving and you're going to the big leagues, because I had done very well in instructional league. I was the only undrafted player there, and this is where they brought their top prospects. So I was doing very well, loving playing for Jimmy Williams, and sadly, Clyde passed away. It's a very sudden, unexpected passing, and they had to replace him as the director of player development. That director came in. I was not on his radar, and I was back in Miami within basically a couple weeks. And so that began, unfortunately, the beginning of my collapse. So the real fun part was when I went back, this was 1979, when I did return, it was a great team. I knew a lot of the guys from spring training and instructional league and different things, but Cal Ripken was on that team. So it was very special to be his teammate, given what he accomplished. And I've said it in different articles. I was on 3 teams with Cal and we're friends. given what he's accomplished, if I was going to go to the big leagues for a cup of coffee, I would rather have been Cal's teammate. And we did in '79, his first home run derby, which was a lot of fun, was I was chosen with Cal. We were against two hitters from the St. Louis organization. And St. Louis, this was up in St. Petersburg, they had brought in Bullet Bob Feller to pitch the home run derby. And that was so special because, I mean, in retrospect, because right there were two of the top 50 baseball players in the history of baseball. And I was the first guy up. And when I went back to Rip, I said, this isn't, you know, standard issue. Usually it's kind of like a cantaloupe on a golf tee. And Bullet Bob, even though he was 60, was working the corners and doing different things. I said, Rip, you're going to have to dig in here because Bullet Bob's still very competitive, and that's why he's a Hall of Famer. And took us 4 cycles, almost 50 pitches between 4 hitters to Cal finally took one out. I took one out foul in the 4th round, and then Cal took one out. We won the home run derby. So there's a lot of memories and a lot of beautiful things in my book. It's not written, it's not ego based at all. It's based to inspire that, in fact, if you have a dream, no matter what that dream is, if that passion's there, the purpose and just the intention, it will come true. And so my dream, not only playing for the Orioles, but in 1978 with the Miami Orioles, I had always dreamed or dreamt of winning a professional championship and also hitting that 9th inning home run in the final game to win it. And so we had as far as Miami, South Florida, this was one of the great pennant races, if not maybe the top one. We had to win 6 out of our last 7 games. And so there was all that drama. And, you know, of course, one of the things I've always loved about baseball is there's nowhere to hide. It is the most unbelievable sport when it comes to the human connection, because everything in it is cinematic in a way. And so all these twists and turns and great games, close games that we couldn't lose. And sure enough, we end up playing the Detroit Lakeland Tigers, who had won the previous 2 championships the previous 2 years. And their manager was Jim Leland, who took 3 teams to the World Series, won the World Series for the Miami Marlins. And so, you know, we're talking about a great baseball mind. And our manager with Miami was Jimmy Williams, who ended up a World Series champion as well as a coach with the Baltimore Orioles in 1983. These are 2 just super minds. And we made it to winner take all game for the ring. And sure enough, it's going on very close, and a lot of strategy, a lot of different things from both managers. And I was in the on-deck circle in the 8th inning, and there were 2 outs, and Steve Lake, who ended up catching the 7th game of the World Series for the St. Louis Cardinals, was up. And I thought, well, if Lakers gets on, yeah, you know, it's not the 9th inning, but I'll still take one out. I mean, it was percolating. And so he didn't get on, and that ended the inning. And when I was walking back to the dugout, it was over. I knew everything was kind of syncing up, and I could just feel it, that it was going to happen. And so I write about that at bat in depth, what it was like, the release point, just all the pieces that went into that pitch and that at bat. And when the pitcher, you have a small box that you actually frame in your mind, because you never can focus on the pitch. It's moving too fast. So it's done in frames. But when a pitcher's here, when it comes out of his release point, it's only maybe 3 or 4 feet where your brain starts to compute what type of pitch, velocity, what you have to do weight-wise, adjustments, all these things. And when he released that ball right here, I froze it. And I had a small hitting window that if it's in there, that's going to be my pitch. And I had overcommitted my at bat before. My first at bat, I got a single and scored a run. And then this, of course, was in the 9th inning. And we were leading 3-1. But when Jimmy walked by me going out to third base coaching box, he said, "We need you on base, Scotty, whatever you have to do." And so he had a thing. If things weren't going, we had a slide towards the end in the pennant race. And he would call it, he'd say when he was in the locker room after the game, he goes, "I've got a red ass." And that meant like you were glued to the cinder blocks. You were like, "Oh my, here it comes." And he would vent and say what he had to say. And it would, of course, make an impression. So when Jimmy walked by me, he said, you have to get on base to, we've got to have this run, Scotty. I said, "Jimmy, you won't have a red ass tonight." I said, "It's a done deal." And so sure enough, when the pitcher did release that pitch, I saw it was the only pitch in my life where that ball came in and I could see the threads. I could see the red threads. And it came in, it was suspended. It was almost in slow motion. And because I overcommitted my previous at bat, I went back a tick. That's where you go back. So if you come, you're actually where you would have started a normal at bat. And so I went back a tick. And by the time I came up, because I committed, I was in the perfect place to hit a home run. And the writer the next day, the Lakeland sports writer, put Scott Christopher, put the dagger in the Detroit Tigers in the 9th inning with a long home run that the left fielder just turned around and watched go over the fence. So my book shows that it's possible. And it continues on, but it's a very inspirational, very interesting book. So you got me going there. Do you have any questions?
Does anybody have any questions?
How did you segue all this into the beautiful artwork? What was the connection? How has baseball played a part in what you do now?
Well, it played a big part because in my life, having been so exposed to art, that art was a very big part of my DNA as well as baseball. So it's very natural to create and write and sculpt. And I've been doing this. I mean, I've been in the arts for 7 decades, going into the 2020 year. And, it's just, I always created art. They wrote a big article about me in the Miami News about my science fiction novel I was writing while I was playing in Miami. So art is very important. It's very natural. I've never stopped creating. I've had a lot of cultural exchanges, a lot of different things along the way. My wife and I, her name is Elizabeth Christopher. She's a very talented artist. So we create art and so, yeah, the baseball to me, and I actually had an article, baseball to me was total art, because even when I was in a stadium, because of the way my brain composes and just does different pieces artistically, when I was in a stadium, I would even notice the lighting and just the contours, the lines. I love the green grass. I absolutely love the geometrics of a baseball stadium. So even when I was little, I would make little stadiums and just always kind of creating. And baseball, it stimulated me as an artist. And I'm a painter, have been forever, and a writer. And I have done a very large body of work over my lifetime in probably 35 countries where I've had cultural exchanges with our art foundation, Christopher Foundation for the Arts. So we promote the arts, buy art supplies, distribute them in different locations in the world. And we try to do as much as we can to stimulate that creative process. But baseball to me, and it still is, it's very, like when you go through the tunnel and you just walk right into that stadium, to me, it's like this unbelievable canvas, and it always was playing. I mean, every moment during a game for me was kind of captivating, you know, to see how the fans reacted. And I wrote about this in Baseball, Art, and Dreams. Was, you know, I looked at it from a fan perspective, player, manager. You know, I broke the game down in a very academic way, but baseball had a very big influence to me as far as art, because as I accomplished different things, it just validated that, you know, art, it's all possible. I don't believe in corrals, and the artistic process is something when you're exposing yourself creatively and presenting it to the world. For me, it's just, hopefully it will advance mankind, and it will inspire people to want to create, because the creative process is something where, and I've heard this so many times over my lifetime, but people kind of put a lid on it, but it's an extremely important part of our human experience. So I try to expose as much as I can and be an advocate of the process. And writing, it's bad, you know, Baseball, Art, and Dreams, I call it bad, but writing bad has been a beautiful exercise in my creative journey, because what it takes, it's you know, it's a very long memoir, but it does break baseball down in as artistic and passionate way. In my book, I call it The Great Game. And so I've tried to bring that element into my memoir, where people can actually feel that this is so much more than just a sport. This is it's an experience, it's art, it's something that people get so absorbed in when they're in the stadium. They're actually in the box with you when you're in at bat. They suffer, they celebrate. And so it's been a great experience.
Scott, what were some of your impressions of playing in Miami Stadium? And did you have any fan interaction?
Well, yeah, because I was there 2.5 seasons. Every time I went in the stadium, it was special. I knew I never took for granted that I had been given this opportunity to play professional baseball. And so when I walked in that stadium, and it was kind of a hallowed stadium with its history and all the great players that had come through there, it was very special. And the fans, the Miami fans were outstanding. And I loved, my wife and I, we lived in Coconut Grove. So we lived kind of like a bohemian lifestyle. We were always creating, writing, painting, doing all this. And then when the second I stepped out of our car in the parking lot, then it was game time, and I could be very focused. And that's why, you know, I hold different records that require a lot of focus and commitment. Here's a kind of a neat record, and this is interesting for your society. This was in 1979. And so Christopher tripled and scored in the 3rd and again in the 5th. Cal Ripken went 3 for 4 and scored Miami's other 2 runs. Now, what is interesting about this, and maybe one of your members could research it, but I believe that I'm the only player in the history of professional baseball to hit 2 triples from different sides of the plate in the same game twice in one season. So what I'm saying is, and Rip was in both of those games, but this particular one in Miami, I hit a triple right-handed and left-handed in the same game twice in one season. I think that would be a real trivia question for SABR to explore. But we had, you know, there were fans that were very loyal. when we did win the championship, we were in the playoffs in '78. And then when we did win them, that was a really wonderful, you know, for me and my teammates to bring that championship back to Miami. It was just that special. It was always special there. I mean, Miami's a, you know, it's a very cultural, very interesting city. And my wife and I, we made the most of it. So, and there was a fan there, his name was Billy Rowe. And Billy had been a just loyal, retired gentleman. And my wife, whose name was Sharon Christopher, she and Billy became like, I mean, they sat together every game for 2.5 years. And he would come visit us in Virginia, and just a great guy. So that was the kind of fans and the loyalty of the, you know, any stadium that you play in, they want you to win. But Miami, they just loved the game, the fans in Miami, and they would come to the games, and regardless of the outcome, they were there to support you 100%. So Miami was wonderful. The stadium was interesting. We had Sonny Hirsch, who was a very animated, very interesting general manager. He ran a good show, and I was there with three different managers, but it was, you know, everything there was top show. I mean, the stadium, it got a little rocky sometimes when we got back from road trips late at night, but I was honored to play there for 2.5 seasons.
Fill us in, you were a prolific base stealer too. One season you stole 41 out of 42 attempts.
Right, that was in 1978. So that set multiple records. Yeah, my first year I was 25 out of 28. My first year in '78, I was a shortstop. I came in as a shortstop. Now the skin part, that's the dirt part of an infield, in pro ball was a little bit deeper. And so when I had, you know, I mean, there's no margin for error in pro ball. There's absolutely none. And so I would have to spin. I could look in my glove and I could spin the ball. I can't feel the threads, but I could spin it and lock right into them. So it was something I mastered over many years. But then when you're turning double plays and just different things, there was a slight hitch, and that hitch does not work in pro ball. So I was experimenting with different positions, and yeah, that was that. But I could run, you know, I was with Cal a year ago, April. I gave him a copy of my book in Maryland. We were at Congressional Country Club together, and I gave him a copy of my book. And in a small speech he said to some guests there that night, he said I was probably the fastest player in the organization. So I was definitely in the top 3 or 4 as far as speed, if not the fastest. And I had kind of mastered the art of stealing bases. I was only thrown out, I don't even know, 2 or 3 times in college, and I may have been picked off 2 of those times. So when I came into pro ball, my first year I was 25 out of 28. Then I set multiple records. It's still the Baltimore Orioles organizational record all time is 41 out of 42. So that was great to set that in Miami and be a part of that. But yeah, I was an exceptional base runner. When I did go and convert to being a center fielder primarily, in 1979, I was nominated for the Silver Glove as an outfielder. I actually won it. I'm not sure why that didn't work. They nominated 5 people throughout the minors, and I had the highest fielding percentage outside of rookie ball. There were 2 fellas that didn't make an error in 70 games, but I only made 1 error in over 100 games in 1979. That was half a season at Charlotte and half a season in Miami. So I I love playing the outfield. I like the openness, and I kind of mastered it because only making one error in over 100 games isn't easy, and I didn't make an error in instructional league. So I had been able to use my mind. I have, let's see, let me show you this very quickly. I have I got a copyright in 1980.
Scott, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we're almost about to expire on time.
Okay, so anyway, my mind, I worked with my mind given my handicap. So I was the first one that came up with my baseball offensive batting sheets, which would record every pitch. I have the copyright on all the grids and all the things that are out there, because that's how I was able to compensate for having at times, half a right hand. But yeah, so you got me going. But please ask any questions that you like.
Okay, Scott, we got about 4 minutes left. Can you tell us how we can find your book, where we can find it?
Sure. So originally, it's actually there's another evolution to my book. And so my first book was Baseball, Blood, and Art. And it got rave reviews, just was beautifully received. But then I could see I needed to write, I knew that I could bring it up to 110%. I was seeing some things that I couldn't overlook as I was able to break it down more academically. So I changed the title. Now it's Baseball, Art, and Dreams. And the new version, this one was only an advanced reader's copy, but underneath this. So my new version will be available in the spring of 2021. ARC, Advanced Reader Copy number 2, is coming out. And right now, there's a screenplay being written on my story by Rich Henrich. He won a Emmy Award in 2013, I believe, as Best Director. It was a regional Emmy Award in California, in multiple states. And then he also was up for a Best Screenwriter. So he is actually writing a screenplay right now for my book. So there's a good chance it will evolve into a movie. But if your guests and fans, if they go to baseballartanddreams.com, they can sign up for it's a website. They put in their email, and then they'll get information on when my release is going to be. Right now, it looks very good for right around spring training of 2021.
I put in for it. When you were talking, I found it and I typed in and I got a confirmation email. So thanks.
Well, Lou, that makes me happy.
Yeah.
But all the fans, and I think people that read it, hopefully will then want to share the vision of, being an athlete, being a very handicapped athlete, doing things that I think I did more with my handicap than any player probably in professional baseball history of an injury. I know there's been players that have played 2 or 3 with one arm, but that was not the actual injury to their throwing hand and arm. So, it's going to be a very interesting book on many levels, and I can't thank you all enough for giving me the opportunity to share the inspiration. And you all are going to be part of the inspiration, putting it out there.
Well, Scott, thank you. Appreciate you sharing your story, and thank you for coming on and speaking with us tonight.
Listen, it's been my honor, and let's just all touch them all, swing for the fences, and keep the journey going. And I'm telling you and myself, and players, and we're so lucky to have the great game be part of our lives. It's truly an amazing experience, and if you live it like we do, or have it in your DNA, and you love whatever part of it, it truly is a gift. So I'm excited to have been part of baseball and part of your show tonight.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Lou, and thank you, everybody, for participating.
Yeah,
And
thank you all very much. Keep it going. You know, we've got some nice playoffs coming up, Major League Baseball, given.
First pitches in 15 minutes, guys. 8:45.
Okay.
Got it.
Related.
So enjoy it all.
It's perfect timing. We got the meeting in, and now we get to watch baseball.
Do
Go
it.
Fish.
Okay, go get them, gang, and thank you very much. It's been
All
my
right.
Scott.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Scott.
adios. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll do it again, guys.
Yes.
Maybe after the World Series, do a recap, Sam. We'll try to get some folks in.
Let's do it again. I got a couple people I'm going to check back with, so maybe next month, probably
Okay.
same time at the end of the month.
Yeah, at the end of the
Thursday.
series. Yeah, I've got a couple names too that I think we
Oh,
can
good.
bring in. So you and I will talk, and if you guys have names of baseball people, pass them on to Sam so we can invite them, and we'll try to. I think the Marlins game tonight kind of shut some people out, you know, figuring they're going to watch some baseball. So I don't want to interfere with people's baseball habits when there's only a few games left. So I'm going to drive home from here. You guys be safe. I got a little bit of a ride. And be
All right.
safe, everybody.
Be safe. Good night,
All right.
everyone.
Take care.
All right. Good night, everybody.